Let's ride. The creatures might be coming to get ya, but I'm here to slay monsters like Geralt the Witcher. And I'm here with ya, that's all she wrote. Tight like a fat couple caught up in coach for my bros and my blokes. Mamacitas y amigas, yes, all of my folks. If the whole world starts to go up in smoke, we're riding together and we're going for broke. But I'm trying to make sure that don't happen. Climb on this boat with me, ride with your captain. Maintain yourself in an orderly fashion. Calm and collected, but I still need your passion. This is a call to action, packed with exact facts. Building more bridges than you will with a hashtag. Big dog barking, send the fat cats running. Revolution coming now, ain't that something?
Welcome to Book Time with Ryan. I am Ryan, and you were just listening to Gangsta Grass. Their song, Ride With You, was suggested by the band for this video. So that is a new high for my channel, that I actually got feedback from the band that I used their song. Why did I use Gangsta Grass? I like them. I've listened to them in concert at a bluegrass festival in upstate New York. I actually stayed at the same house that they were staying at. I think they got in late because of travel issues, and I was asleep, but they got there and stayed in the same kind of big hostel, not like negative hostel, but like youth hostel kind of house in upstate New York years ago now. But I really like them. They're mentioned in the book that I'm talking about today. The book I'm talking about today is Doctors and Friends, and the song Ride With You just seemed perfect, especially the piece that I took out. You can buy the whole thing for 99 cents on iTunes, but you can also get the whole CD and other albums too. When I saw them mentioned in this book, it kind of blew me away. So I mentioned it on Twitter to Kimmery, the author, and tagged the band, and they actually wrote back, and they were excited to be included in a book too. So it was cool for everyone. I will give you a little bit of background about this book and just some of the history there and some things that stood out initially. I'm going to talk about the book, but I don't want to give away too much. I will just say that I gave this 5 stars, and I highly recommend it. It was well researched. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. My dad was a doctor. He's still a doctor. Was a doctor at Vanderbilt, and the author Kimmery Martin was a resident in the emergency department where my dad worked, and he actually told me about this book. I reached out on Twitter to Kimmery and found out that the book kind of felt like a little bit like The Hot Zone by Richard Preston, in that once you read it, you don't really want to go outside, and that is pretty true. Because it deals with viruses, one virus specifically. It deals with the Arturo virus. And you may be asking yourself, what is the Arturo virus? It's a fake virus, but I didn't know that. So I was talking to my dad about it, and I told him, it's the Arturo virus. And he said, I know what that was. Then I questioned his education and his 38 years of medical experience. And then when I got to the end of the book, I found out that it was a fake virus. So my dad is okay then. There are a few things that happened in this book, and this happens every so often when I'm reading something. There are these kind of overlaps with areas that I've been or things that I've done. So part of this book takes place in Spain. Road to Spain is mentioned. I was in Road to Spain on this Department of Defense program. It actually talks about the base there. It talks about a naval base in San Diego where I was there for a short time on a ship. It brings up Vanderbilt, which is a place that I applied for college. My dad worked there, and it was in Nashville where I grew up. She brings up bluegrass and banjos, and anytime somebody brings up banjos in a book, I'm a big fan of that. But she also brought up Gangsta Grass, which is, again, the reason that I used their song at the beginning of this video. And thanks to Gangsta Grass for suggesting the song that I used, and I hope I used a good piece of it. I actually think it applies to this book. And finally, there's a scene in this book where one of the main characters is flying somewhere, and her kids pick up on the fact that she's nervous. That was another thing that resonated with me because my dad crashed in a helicopter in Pittsburgh. He lived, everyone lived, but it affected him flying on planes for a very long time, especially takeoffs. And in the book, this character in her past had crashed in a plane. It affected how stressed she would get on takeoff. So actually, you know what? I'm going to post a picture of the newspaper article that talked about that crash, which was when I was just a little bitty baby. There you go. That's newspaper. All right, so what is Doctors and Friends about? I'll start it off by saying that Kimmery's very nice, and she's been very responsive on Twitter. And Kimmery is an emergency medicine physician. She wrote this book before the pandemic, before COVID-19. It's about a pandemic, but it was written almost entirely before. There were some edits after the fact, and she talks about that in a note after you finish the book. It's really about a group of women who are friends. They became friends in medical school. They all had different specialties: emergency medicine, urology, internal medicine. Actually, I'll just tell you who they are, because it says in the front of the book who they are. The main friends are Kira Marchant. She's an infectious disease physician, and she works for CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Vanny Darshana, she's in internal medicine. Candy Compton Winfield, she goes by Compton because she doesn't like her first name, and she's an emergency medicine doctor. Zadie, pediatric cardiology. Hannah is an OBGYN. Emma is a trauma surgeon. Georgia is in urology. These women are all friends, and once or twice a year they all get together. They travel somewhere, they get together, they see the world. They reminisce about their times in medical school. They've all most of them have gone their separate ways around the country, around the United States, to practice medicine in some area. The first main section of the book is before the virus, then there's a section during the virus, and then there's a section after the virus. So they get together. One of the characters, Kira, who is also called Kiki sometimes in the book, she works for CDC. She's kind of on the special forces of the CDC, and they deploy when there's an outbreak to do the initial testing to really tackle it. But she's on vacation. She's on vacation with her 2 kids. They're visiting her ex-boyfriend who lives in Spain, and they're all going to get together and chill for a week or 2 and then go back to the United States. While this is happening, there are rumors that are filtering through to Kira from the CDC and her boss Wally at the CDC, and they're about a possible outbreak. There's this guy who was taking a ferry from Morocco to Spain, and he collapsed and died. And he was coughing, he was spitting up blood. They believe it's some kind of virus, but they don't know what kind yet. And they don't know if this is a big deal. It could be any number of things, but they're just getting initial reports. The special forces kind of intel gathering arm of the CDC is monitoring internet traffic to see what's going on. We, as the readers, are pretty sure this is going to be a bigger deal, but when you think about it from their point of view, not surprising that you wouldn't just react. I mean, this is every time you go out, you hear people coughing. Granted, now during COVID, you hear somebody cough and you kind of get mad. Like, go home. Why are you coughing in the restaurant? And if you need to cough, you try to not cough, and it makes it even worse because it just, obviously your body wants to cough for some reason. They were operating in an area where they didn't have omniscient point of view, so they don't think a whole lot about it, but they're going to monitor. Kira meets up with all her friends. They're hanging out. They're going to go to Morocco for the day or 2 days. And on the way there, they actually take the same ferry that this man had died on a couple weeks before, or a week before. And one of the servers on the ferry is really sick, and they pick up on that. She actually collapses and dies in front of them, and they respond to that. Especially Compton, her friend who's the emergency medicine physician. So, because she believes she's already been exposed, they had already dealt with one other kid. From there, they have to quarantine later. It becomes clearer as the book goes on that this is a much bigger problem. There's 2 different versions of it. The second one's airborne, has an R naught that's greater than measles, so it spreads faster than measles. It's also deadly. I don't want to give away too much of the book. I will tell you that if you read the description, don't let it scare you off, because there are ups and downs in this. It will remind you of COVID, and it will give you, I think, having experience with family in this area, a good idea of the stress and the onslaught that medical professionals feel, and especially felt at the beginning of COVID, on their daily lives. These women continue to touch base with each other. They talk about the stresses that they're feeling. Each of them are impacted differently because of their specialties, but you get a nice view of really the impact that they're experiencing, not only as medical professionals, but also as individuals, as wives, as girlfriends, as parents, as hopeful parents. I will tell you that this is the first book that I've ever teared up for. I'm not going to say why, but I will say that as a parent, I think some of the things that you think about, your worst case scenarios that every parent thinks about, are touched on in this book in an appropriate way. It's not like doom and gloom. There are definitely rough parts, but there's also some hope in it too. So don't let that scare you. It is really well done. I mean, Kimmery has background in medicine, right? She also has an experience of being an emergency medicine doctor dealing with pandemics, even though this was mostly written before the pandemic. It's amazing when you're reading it, it's so prescient. Some of the stuff that she brings up, either some of the challenges that the country and the world were exposed to, the individuals that are kind of the focus of the book, what they were exposed to. It's really amazing how a lot of that parallels what we're experiencing now in the reality of COVID. But it's a different virus. It is a more deadly virus. It is a more contagious virus. It is not COVID. Don't read it thinking this is going to be COVID. But when you read it, you will get parallels. This book takes place over a year and a half. So if only that had been our experience. And then there's also some follow-on symptoms that they'll get into too. There's a lot of references to future parts of the book in the book, and I found myself by the very end so nervous about what was going on that I would look briefly at the next page, not scanning it. I would just look over because I was like, please, is this person alive? Is this person dead? I need to know. And then I tried not to because it would kind of ruin it, but not. It was an intense read. I would give this 5 stars. Some aspects of this book are things that I probably would not typically read. I haven't read a book that's all women, that the main characters are all women, that they're all friends. I could see women loving this because it's about friendship between women, those relationships. As a male, it appealed to me too. It's not, I don't know, chick lit. I don't know what chick lit is actually referring to, if that's romance or what. This is all the characters, the main characters are women. The author's obviously a woman, but it should appeal across the board to anybody. If you're a male and you're like, I don't want to read about women. It is an intense read. It is a well-researched read. It is scary. It is funny. It is realistic. I found the dialogue and even the monologue, the internal monologues of the characters, so accurate, even in my limited experience with a dad who works in an emergency room. I found just kind of the approach that they took to medicine to be very accurate too. Just the way they try not to internalize stuff, but there are things at work that still affect them. Definitely a lot of the stress of the pandemic comes through in the writing, which is great because it's a reality. And I would just say, I give it 5 stars. I cried during it. I've never done that before. I don't cry all the time, but I'm not against crying. I'm all for a good cry, like when little kids get their hearing aids and they hear for the first time as a baby, or they get their little glasses and they see their parents for the first time, or when people get those glasses that help them with color blindness and they see color for the first time, and even people coming home from overseas, seeing their kids. I'm fine with a good cry, but I have not experienced that reading, and this is the first time that I experienced that much of an emotional connection with the character. Finished it yesterday, and I couldn't film this right after. I had to step away and take some time. But I really enjoyed it. I think Kimmery Martin did a great job. Dr. Martin did a great job writing this. I think it's current, it's relevant, it's smart, it's funny, it's scary. Check it out. Doctors and Friends. It is well worth the time, the investment to buy this book. Buy it now. This is the time to read it, but it will always be relevant. It's just a book that will affect you in the right way. I'm wearing my Vanderbilt hat. That's a shout out to Kimmery and the other Vanderbilt ER doctors that my dad worked with. That's where my dad knew her from. I'm also wearing a Hatfield Banjos shirt. Hatfield Banjos are made by Arthur Hatfield in Glasgow, Kentucky. And this book references Kentucky because I believe Kimmery's from Kentucky. Also, another shout out to Gangsta Grass. Check out their albums. Give it a listen. It's a very cool, different. If you like bluegrass, it's different than your typical mainstream bluegrass. It has all the instruments, but it's a cool style. So check it out. Those guys are real cool. I feel like they're all tall, if I remember correctly. They're all tall dudes, or maybe I'm just short. So check it out. Bluegrass is awesome. Banjos are awesome. Gangsta Grass is awesome. Kimmery Martin's awesome. Viruses suck. Fuck you, COVID-19. And read this book. Enjoy it. And I will talk to you later. Thanks.